Growing up, I lived primarily with my mom, and then I had standard visitation with my dad, usually every other weekend and then summers. With my dad, it was always something a little different, a little special, because I only got to see him every other weekend. My dad was a pretty unsavory character, like to other people, but to me, he was the best dad in the world. And I would always be on my best behavior. So I would do anything that he asked me to do. And I didn't know what drugs were, and I didn't know that he was doing anything bad. But he would always have me go drop off stuff to people's houses, and I didn't understand what it was. I just thought I was being a big help to him, because that's what he would tell me. So I would take VHS tapes, and I would drop them off at people's houses, and then they would go inside and they'd bring me the tape back, and I didn't ever think anything of it. And I did that from about 7 or 8 to about 12 years old. And about 12 years old, I went through DARE, and so I realized what drugs were. I always knew, I guess I never put 2 and 2 together, that I was delivering his drugs for him, and they were putting money back in the cassettes or in the videotape. But I never realized that that's what I was doing until I went through DARE. And I remember one day I went down to the basement, and that's where my uncle and my dad were, and he had like everything laid out on a table, and he was weighing things. And so I knew immediately that he was doing drugs and dealing drugs.
When I was growing up, I lived with my biological mom and dad until I was about 5 years old. Me and my sister. I have a sister who's 3 years younger than me. And my parents eventually had problems. I don't know the whole story about it. I was young. I know some of it was drug related. A lot of it was. And I ended up going to live with my dad's mom and his stepdad. And it was my granddad, who was really the only father I ever really knew. My grandfather taught me things. That's one of the main things I remember, was him teaching me things. And that's the kind of father I want to be. Not just how to do this thing or how to do that thing, but how to be, how to treat people, how to be good to people, you know? Those aren't things I've necessarily practiced throughout my life. I'm starting to now.
My background is I'm one of 4 children. I am the youngest of 4. My brothers and sisters and I have different fathers. My father was the only one in the house. He was sort of a detached dad. He didn't really get involved in our lives. I graduated from law school. I practiced law for a while. I went to college on a baseball scholarship. And at the age of 54, I became a father for the first time. The type of father that I hope to be and that I think I am is totally different than the father that I had. My father was pretty aloof and detached. I can only remember my father telling me one time that he loved me. I can't ever recall my father showing any type of emotion or demonstrating any affection toward me. I try to be the exact opposite toward my daughter. I constantly tell her I love her. I hug her and pick her up and squeeze her all the time. And you know, I just constantly tell her that I love her, although she doesn't really comprehend the meaning of that. I don't think in word terms, but I think she can actually feel the emotions that I show toward her. So I want to be a father that's involved in my child's life throughout the entire process. I want her to know that her father really loves her, that her father fought for her, and that there's nothing more important to me than her well-being.
Growing up for me, I faced a lot of challenges with my family because of issues that I had had with my real father. You know, it was me, my sister, my stepdad, and my mom growing up. There was a lot of, I guess you could say hostility within the family because, you know, I was a stepchild to my dad. I mean, other than that, I always had a place to live, and my family always took care of us. I joined the Army originally to get money for college and, to help, with that kind of stuff. I actually had met her a few months before we deployed to Iraq. We had met actually in the Army.
My mom would always put my dad down, saying that he was, worthless, and that, he didn't pay child support, and he was good for nothing, and it really bothered me, and it really affected me, because when she put him down, she was also putting me down, because I'm half my dad. It really bothered me, even though I knew that he had made a bad decision and he had made, a choice that in the end affected me. I still didn't want my mom to talk bad about him, because when she talked bad in turn about him, it made me feel like there was something wrong with me. I couldn't go and see him for a long time, and I remember my mom got police involved, CPS involved. She went to the courts, and I had to go talk to a therapist, and then I had to go talk to a guardian ad litem, and we had to have a meeting. It was the guardian ad litem and me and my dad. I remember this was the last time I ever saw him, and he said, why did you tell? And I said, I'm sorry, and that was it. I had a really rough go at it in my teenage years, and I made a lot of unsavory choices because I was feeling so left and so neglected. My dad ended up signing over his parental rights. He terminated his rights, and so I then had no dad. To be told at 12 that your dad doesn't want to have anything to do with you and you won't see him, it just devastated me.
They terminated my rights to my first two children. And I may never see those kids again, That was tough, and after they took my kids from me, I kind of went off the deep end. I had done drugs before. Eventually had a child with another woman who I'm still with, and we're still working through this CPS case together. She had trace amounts of marijuana in her system at the hospital when the baby was born, so CPS got involved immediately and didn't immediately take custody of the child from us. Had us under a provision where we had to be supervised, but we could do it in our home or at several other places. And I was so deep into my addiction that I couldn't stop. I started smoking this K2 synthetic marijuana to try to get by and not fail drug tests. And eventually came to a point where that stuff poisoned me and almost killed me. And I woke up from that after being in a coma for 3 days in a hospital. Woke up not knowing where I was or really what had happened. After the incident where I ended up being hospitalized, they of course took custody of the child from me and my wife and placed him with her mother. And that's where he's been for the last 10 months. And I feel like she's done a good job with him. I guess I don't get to see that, because I'm not allowed to see my son unless CPS supervises it. But CPS filed aggravated circumstances against me because of 2 prior terminations of my rights to 2 of my children.
The way CPS became involved in my life is this. During my child's mother's pregnancy, she had several incidents where she had to go to the hospital for emergency treatment. At that time, she admitted to them that she did have drugs in her system, so CPS was already alerted to the fact that there was some drug use going on. Subsequently, when my daughter was born, she did test positive for cocaine in her system at that time. In terms of my daughter's mother's involvement in her life right now, unfortunately, she has chosen for whatever reason not to be involved. She saw her once in the last 2 years. She did not participate in the legal proceedings that were going on, so she pretty much just gave up on my daughter. However, I do have to be honest in saying that I don't take that as a sign that she doesn't love her daughter. I don't feel like she's really capable of giving our daughter the love that she deserves. She grew up in the foster care system herself. She was in the foster care up until the age 18, so she never really had a family. She never really understood what it takes to be a part of a family. So I don't hold that against her. I would like to keep that door open for her to come back into our daughter's life at some point in time in the future. I don't think I'll never close that door. If that door will be closed, it will be my daughter's decision. Once she gets to an age where she can really understand the ramifications of what happened and also what that could mean for her future.
She had called me that night and told me that that she couldn't handle the kids anymore. That she didn't want anything to do with them. She wanted to leave, and she was going to leave the kids at the house. So I ended up going over to the house, and when I got into the house, the kids were outside in their underwear, playing on the street. So I'd taken the kids in the house. I mean, this was probably 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. So I'd taken the kids in the house, put them to bed, and you know, once I walked into the house, that's when I knew the condition and the state of the house, which was utterly horrific. When CPS got involved, you know, at first I was treated like I wasn't really in the picture or that I really didn't care about my kids. I think a lot of that had to do with what my ex-wife had to say to CPS. Once we were actually established and we had a caseworker on our case that, you know, we were in contact with all the time and stuff like that, then that stuff kind of went away, and she realized that I wanted custody of my kids and that I wanted my kids back, and that it would be better for me to have them than it would be for my ex-wife.
It bothers me when parents talk bad about, you know, the child's father or mother, whatever the case may be. The child hears that and they know. Just because whatever the mom or the dad says about the absent parent, you know, that doesn't make it fact.
Getting the father's side of the story, I think, is very important. You know, in my case, my ex-wife, she had lied about a lot of the stuff that had actually happened, and she had made me out to be somebody who really wasn't, really didn't want to be in their kids' lives and didn't actually care for the kids, which is really not the case. I mean, you know, I know there's a big stigma on dads, and you know, that they don't want to be in their children's lives, or that they can't, or you know, just whatever the case is. I mean, I think it's always good to hear both sides of the story, but you have to take an objection on both sides. You can't just, you know, listen to the mother and that be it.
With respect to CPS, I can truly say that they treated me with respect. I don't, you know, from my previous experience as an attorney, I've handled these type cases, so I know that the treatment that I received was not the norm. But the caseworker that I had was very compassionate. She was kind toward me. Now, unfortunately, I had two other caseworkers prior to her, and I can't say the same about them. They were pretty gruff. They were demanding. They didn't really try to work with me. They simply tried to dictate things to me. The unfortunate part about this situation is that I feel that they came into it with a preconceived notion.
With my experience with CPS, they were in fact needed in my case. And I think the CPS did an excellent job trying to help me. My caseworker, you know, she always had anything that I ever needed. I had, you know, a good guideline of what was laid out for me to get my children back. My life's changed drastically because, you know, now it's just me. It's not, you know, I don't have somebody else to support me, I guess you should say. You know, being active duty military, you know, working 50, 60 hours a week and then coming home and taking care of the kids, you know, it's stressful, but, you know, I've never actually looked at it like it was a job or anything like that. It's always been something that I've had to do. So, you know, even when CPS got involved, there wasn't that, you know, option of it not working.
What I would say to CPS caseworkers is, first and foremost, people can change. I understand that a lot of the parents that they have to deal with are not the most upstanding citizens. I feel like a lot of people they deal with are drug addicts. People can overcome that there are success stories out there. There are people who clean up and there's a lot of addicts with a lot of potential can stop doing what they're doing, and there are programs that CPS can refer them to that can help with that. I'd say I know that there are statistics out there that show that kids that grow up with their biological mother and father end up better off, end up doing better in school, end up with less chances of going to prison, end up being more self-sufficient, end up just being better people. The fathers are a big part of that. You know, you can't just look at the father as an afterthought. You need to work with both parents.
I think it's not only is it policy to contact absent parents, but it's also, it's really important for the child, because you don't know what resources that parent, and we say absent parents, but we don't know for a fact that they're absent until we've contacted them. It might be that they very much are in the picture. Mom just doesn't want them to know that CPS is involved. It's very important to contact the absent parent, because they can also make informed and educated decisions about child safety. You know, I mean, maybe it would be better for kiddo to go stay with dad for a week, or, you know, dad can offer up grandparents as a placement, or, you know, so if you don't contact absent dad or mom, you're missing a huge piece of that child's life that you need to assess in order to assess child safety.
Since I've become a single dad, my life has changed in immeasurable ways. For one thing, it has made me a much more responsible person. If there is one thing I can say good about my dad, it was that every morning I saw my dad get up and go to work. That left an impression on me. So I want my daughter to see me doing those same things. I don't want her to see me laying around the house. So it has definitely made me a lot less selfish. You know, I really truly understand the meaning now of putting someone else first. Whereas before I was single for practically my whole life. I was married for about 6 years out of my 54 years. So I was really a selfish individual. But now that my daughter has come along, I mean, all this selfishness just seems to disappear. I truly understand what it means to put someone else first. And most importantly, it's I really, you know, probably for the first time in my life, I really know what it feels like to give love, not just to receive love.
What's best for the children is to grow up with their parents. And just because a person is broken and has not been a great person at times prior in their life, doesn't mean that they can't be with a little bit of help. And if you have a chance to maybe help somebody, if you can help one person out of 100 and help that kid to have a better childhood and a better life, then you've made the world a better place.
I will never ever understand why he did what he did, why he put me in the situations that he put me in. Now that I'm older, I can look back and I can understand how ridiculously stupid decisions he made, put me in really dangerous places in the middle of the night. With all that being said, and even though I'm sure it sounds like he's a really, really awful person for doing what he did, I still love him. And he's still my dad, and I'm still half of him. So